United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Megan, and welcome to everyone who's live and later on tape or stream. And to the members, welcome to the December 11th meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. We have a good working agenda ahead of us. I want to make a suggestion that in view of some of the schedules of our members, that we take up certain subjects not in the order in which they're necessarily in the agenda. That'll give people, also I'd like to catch you fresh as opposed to later. So I thought a good place for us to start, unless there's some objection, is to begin the process of looking at and trying to set priorities for funding that might be requested either on behalf of specifically our committee or other organizations, that I'll explain very briefly the concept beyond this. We only need to be reminded that our committee is to promote and guide. We're supposed to involve and prod other committees and other groups to actually take up the work and actually make things happen on the ground. And as far as I can make out, the Board of Selectmen and to some extent the Planning Board have done that, and so has the Council on Aging and a few others. So what I've done here is made placeholders for us in the budgeting process. So these are not yet requests. These are proposed notions, proposed directions that we may or may not go into. So we have a choice tonight. I'm seeking the wisdom of this committee. Do none of them, press on none of them. There could be an argument for that. Or take a look at take a look at others that are not necessarily listed here, that however are in the master plan. That's the only restriction or the only requirement that we've got. Or include them or not in the list that's here and set some priorities. I'd like to get to at least one or none that we can support and defend and hopefully get the necessary funding to achieve it on behalf of the town, and also put us in a position to compete successfully for any supplemental funds we could get from the Commonwealth or elsewhere. So that's the working concept behind this exercise. I'm glad to see the Chase is here and other members who have other exposures to other activities going on in town, so we get a flavor on such topics as, are we going too fast, too slow? Does our cup runneth over? Have we hit the point where we ought to slow things down? Slowing down is not my style, so I'm glad that you're all here. So with that, I'll open the floor. And what I'd like to do, is our usual custom, is to move in an orderly fashion around the room, or disorderly fashion around the room, and get your input and suggestions on how you'd like to proceed. I think what I'd like to start off with is, does anyone here, after reviewing the master plan and the list provided, the agenda, does anyone here, we'll start with that, have some notions of things that they would like to have either added to the list or put on the list, and with the idea of replacing what's in front of you? It's perfectly all right to replace. I'll start with Chase because of he happens to be here and I feel like picking on him.
That's what I get for sitting at the end. It's not so much it's not on the list. What I went to when I was looking at the master plan and the implementation of it is what's getting orphaned, you know, and I'm hesitant to add things to our plate because I'm actually concerned that we're not advancing everything that's on our plate effectively enough. But I nonetheless went to the things that I don't know if we're really moving forward at all, and what I really came down to was the open space and recreation components of the master plan. I mean, they're in the periphery of what we're doing in a lot of different realms. I would add transportation to that, except that now we have the Transportation Advisory Committee that is paying attention to those things and moving them forward. So I don't have any suggestions about specific suggestions that I want to see us take forward here, except to keep in mind that I think we are leaving some of those open space and recreation pieces orphaned a little bit collectively, and I don't just mean this group, I mean as a town.
Isn't don't the people like the Conservation Trust and so on, aren't they? So it seems to me like they're kind of always moving forward on some open space issues, acquisitions of open space and so on, so I don't know, I think that is sometimes, does seem to be moving forward, even if we don't see it so much, which may be unfortunate too. I would like to see it more a little bit.
And I think where we could, again, when I say we, I mean collectively, the town government, the boards and committees that are responsible for implementing the master plan more broadly, is I think work more collectively there, because certainly Sudbury Valley trustees have a mission that they're implementing. The Littleton Conservation Trust has a mission that they're implementing, and it's rarely cross purposes with what the town is interested in doing, but it's not always as complementary and consistent as it could be. And I think a lot of that comes down to the differences in resources that both have, and the different tools that both have. Certainly, the Conservation Trust and Sudbury Valley trustees they have money dedicated exclusively for acquisition of open space. The town has some legal tools, though, that we can use, or that afford us opportunities, and I don't know that we're taking advantage of. The chapter land, for example, that comes through, engaging property owners, really deciding, really following our open space master plan effectively. So I don't want to belabor that point, but that's the one place where I think we don't have any momentum collectively as far as the master plan's vision of open space is concerned.
Okay, what's interesting about your comment is that probably the first point is the information get caught up or not. And there's at least 3 committees I can think of right off the bat that have something to do with open space.
Absolutely.
And so part of our, shall we say, not original, but our ongoing process is to have members from here actually make contact with the chairman of those particular committees and ask the very polite question, what are you up to, what you're doing, attend meetings, take a look at the minutes of their meetings if they keep them. A lot of committees do not do that. And also get a handle on what's going on, including available funds that are available on occasion for such things as open space and recreation. Not the other side, but the complementary piece to this, and that's why I want to be careful that we don't silo too much. The other piece of this is housing and the use of private land for housing purpose. I'll just not just public land, but private land for housing. And the two of them very often are moving in not necessarily different directions, but they're looking at sometimes the very same properties.
Mm-hmm.
So that process has so far been, as you correctly point out, to some extent siloed. So maybe our first task here is to not necessarily form another committee, but actually assign one of us to the task of going to open space and recreation and seeing where, I know they're supposed to be doing if I'm not mistaken, Maren, they're supposed to be doing a survey or have done a survey of open space in town, correct?
Well, we have a current open space and recreation plan that includes, all of the.
Right, how old is that plan?
Just a couple of years.
So, yeah, 2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah.
2 years old.
Yeah, and who, it is part of the quote, the master plan.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, who is taking responsibility for trying to try to define what the policy should be and implementing those policies?
Right, and I guess to me that brings to mind one of the items, recommendations for implementation was to have a policy discussion about how to set priorities for acquisition of open space.
And I think
that conversation has been, we've completed the loop on.
And that's where, from where I sit on the Board of Selectmen, I think that's where we simply have to take the lead there and engage all of the various stakeholders in that discussion because, and it's been, if not two, or if not three, at least two members of the Board of Selectmen have identified that prioritization, that sort of rubric for what properties do we want to acquire and how are we going to go about acquiring them. We don't have that, and we've identified that as a priority.
I think the,
Excuse me, just leaping ahead, to
Oh,
make
sorry.
sure we don't get really siloed, okay, here. There is another, I think it's up in 2020, there's a requirement, and actually it makes sense, to do a inventory of housing stock in the town. And that sets the pace for housing production. It's quite literally called the housing production. So that also, as it were, looks at and asks the question, where is future building going to occur? What kind is it going to be? And very often, the very same spaces that are talked about as being, quote, open, or to be left open, are very often the very same spaces that become candidates for development. It happens over and over again. And there's no coherence at all, not even a consensus, it just stays with a division. So I think it would be up to us to find a pathway to bring those, at least those two representative elements together. If that's overly ambitious, speak up now.
Also, I simply have both the privilege and burden of being the first person to speak. It's possible the rest of the committee thinks I'm out to lunch here, and this isn't the thing that we should be pushing for.
I don't think any of us are bashful, so we're gonna find out pretty quickly. And for that, I'll switch to the other end and start off. Go ahead, Jonathan.
okay, well, so many things I sort of have in mind here, it's hard to say exactly. When I spoke and talked, when I was applying to join this committee, I said the thing that I would like to work for is more coordination between different town boards. And I think we've achieved some of that, but I think we could still do more in that direction. And as you say, Mike, with this sort of getting in touch with different committees and sort of seeing where they're at, we've done a fair bit of that early on in our work, and I think that's been helpful. I did talk to actually, sort of a little bit on the side there, to the, whatever they call it, the Open Space Planning Committee or something, and they did have a draft plan which they never actually adopted. I think I submitted that to us, and I think somewhere or other floating around, there's a copy of that in our records. So there is something of that, but again, I'm pretty sure, I was told this was a draft and it was never actually adopted. That committee sort of fell into abeyance. I think it still exists, but
Well,
hasn't much met.
One of the challenges with that is that we have to be careful telling private property owners what we're going to do with their private property, right? And I think that's where that sort of list of properties got a little sticky.
This was not a list of properties.
Oh,
This
okay.
was a list of criteria
list of
for
criteria.
evaluating properties to decide which ones might be, when they, if there was some that sort of were at the top of the list or something and would be worth looking into. As I say, I'm pretty sure that remained as a draft and was never actually approved even by what's the name of that committee, the Open Space Priorities Committee, or something like that. So that would, I would still think that transportation group, I think, was a good beginning in that, in the sort of direction of bringing people together. I think I'd like, I think that could be something that could be pursued a little bit further. I guess the other thing that I see, and this is something I see as a historical commissioner, is that boards that have no staff have difficulties in doing things like applying for state grants, even, grants, we look at them and we say, gee, this is something that really might be useful for us, but, we're all volunteers, we're busy with other things, we tend not to have the time, or maybe even we're not even always sort of aware of what's out there. So, it might be useful to figure out some way that boards like that could work better, especially in terms of things like state grant opportunities, which could be very valuable for the town. So those are a couple of things I'm thinking of, though I do like on the list of things that you have here, the Great Road Corridor Plan, I think that clearly fits in very well with the common work that we're doing, and they really sort of blend in, very much sort of fit into one another, and so I think that's an obvious direction to move in.
Lyle?
Yep, I guess what I would contribute to the two conversations already underway are that today I was speaking to someone who had a notion that it might be wise to poll the landowners of significant parcels in town and find out what their hopes and dreams are for the land that they presently own. What would they see happening as their legacy of ownership? I thought that was actually a pretty wise point, so I don't know if there are groups already talking to people about that, great. If not, it's something that should maybe be considered. The other thing that's perhaps most pressing on my mind as we're working forward to the common revitalization, if I don't know what goes on record and what doesn't, but if there's a plan afoot for some of it to be developed sooner than later, and part of our vision is to change the cross-section of what the road looks like, I imagine that takes some serious doing. So if we need to be talking to Mass DOT, whoever it needs to be, what do we have to do to get ahead of that horse before it runs out of the corral? That's something that concerns me.
Just to give you some comfort, don't want to take time, that part of the roadmap that we're waiting for from Fort Point includes when do we start contacting state agencies in anticipation of just the kind of issue, right onto it. That's exactly one of the top ones. Anna, your either addition or comment on the on Chase's.
Well, just on Chase's or
No,
in general?
In both, general.
So I think that the three items that are listed, the Great Road Corridor Plan, and Mara, correct me if I'm going astray here, but when that was brought up at the planning board meeting last week, I think there was some hesitation as to, well, what exactly would we be doing? Aren't we already doing something with the common? And then talking about how it's actually going up Great Road. I think there was still some question about, well, what exactly is there that we would do? So I think that it requires a little bit more upfront discussion about what's intended for that. The infrastructure and connections to the commons. So one of the things that we've been working on with the revitalization work is not just what could be in terms of the land use, but also all of the green space, the parking, the bike lanes. So those kinds of infrastructure items would actually fall to the town a great deal. So being able to set dollars aside, perhaps to identify, again with a consultant, what would that actually look like and what would those cost implications be. And then the final one in terms of the housing production plan, I think I've heard varying levels of engagement around that. So I've heard some folks say, yes, that's really critical, it'll give us vital information. Other folks have kind of given it more the, well, yeah, it's something that needs to be done, but it isn't, it isn't something that any one particular board necessarily takes on. So I think there's some unanswered questions still about who handles that production plan and its intended use. So I don't know if Maureen can weigh in on that a little bit, given your experience with it.
Yeah, I would put that in the orphan category as well, as far as definitely no particular board in charge of it. But we have successfully gotten through the process of updating the housing production plan 5 years ago.
Great, great, okay. So to that degree, you know, those three on there, I think, the first one maybe needing a little bit more explanation would be helpful so that we can make sure that it's ready to go when it goes before whatever capital decision makers there are. With respect to, Jonathan, your comment about staff, with Marin being able to have someone help her in the office, I think it really frees up her time to provide us with even more opportunities. The grant proposal that was written for the common dollars, and then also the grant proposal that came up for the train station were both her finds and her writing. So, you know, I think that with a little bit more time, you can hopefully do more of the fun stuff. Hopefully that's more fun. But yes, Jonathan, finding time and staff. Yeah.
I was thinking of boards other than the planning board
Yeah.
who might also have needs for.
Well, there are some staff members. I mean, even for example, with Conservation Commission, isn't there a staff member that works with?
Yeah, well, 20 hours a week.
Yeah, there you go. So if we can increase those staffing dollars, we can have whatever we want. Okay, and then to the point around open space. So one of the things that I think is vital, and if you can carry this message to your peers on the Board of Selectmen, that would be awesome. I know I've been trying to talk with the Planning Board about trying to get together to actually talk about housing, land use, and I know that that message is being well received, but I think we need to, you know, just set the date and go with it, and perhaps it is actually bringing together the parties regarding land use.
When you say parties, do you mean, who do you mean?
So Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, the Housing Trust, because it's related to housing, Open Space Committee, or Conservation Commission, Conservation Committee, the Conservation Trust. So basically, if we're talking about land use, who are all the parties that are involved so that it's a comprehensive it's a comprehensive view? Because I know that from the town wanting to have an affordable housing trust, well, we also have a land trust, as I understand it. So to some degree, those are competing ideas. They shouldn't be, but perhaps we can come to some idea of how to work together on all of this. So I think being able to work on that as a priority for 2019 would be great.
Perhaps you've already proposed it. One of the things that we could do as the implementation committee is really drive the bus on a land use summit, right? Like you just suggested. Perhaps that's already moving, and I'm just not.
I think it's moving a little bit on the housing side, but because I don't think we're looking at the full picture by just looking at housing, I think it needs to be broader than that. And again, it could be a little unwieldy, but it's one of the issues that the silo effect creates, right? When we don't get together and talk about these as priorities as a town. So that's one thing. In terms of where we are, so 18 months ago, when we were formed, we set out with 7 priorities out of the 67, and we've been working on those at various pace, at different pace. And I think rather than starting anew with something else, that maybe we revisit those 7 and identify whether or not there's something that needs to be done differently. Because we do have another 12 years. I mean, that's the other thing. We have another 12 years on that master plan, so it doesn't mean everything has to be done in the first 2 years. Would be nice, but, resources are oftentimes a little stumbling block. So to that degree, I would say let's evaluate where we are now and maybe even go back to our chartering boards and say, so here's where we are. Planning board and board of selectmen.
I would agree that, just for efficiency, and I would rather focus on what currently is being worked on, amplify it in any way, like the suggestions about open space and kind of getting all the people working on that together to maybe have one big strong voice versus a whole bunch of voices going in different directions. And I just kind of think that don't move on to don't add anything to the mix until we've tied up what we've been working on. And, I kind of came into this late in the game, but that's just that's how I like to work. I don't want to spread ourselves too thin and go in so many different directions that we don't make progress.
My only issue with, I think there's two things being conflated here. One of the things, in my mind at least, is, I don't want to get into this too much because we're a committee basically that pushes. Mm-hmm. And when we take on an assignment to actually execute, I can't help but notice that the way we do it is we actually get money to do it. And one of the reasons that I put the strange list up, frankly, was to stimulate other committees to say, oh, look, there's those greedy characters, they're going after more money. No, that's ours, okay? And I'm hoping that happens. But the other thing I'm concerned about is that talking about the problems without a particular set of objectives being set before you go into the talk doesn't go anywhere because you spend a lot of time trying to agree on what you want to talk about. Mm-hmm. So we're really talking about basically land use. That's the big title in the master plan, and everything sort of flows out of that. So I have no difficulty in railing and ranting with the selectmen and the planning board to basically, along with all the other committees who are basically siloed off, to basically say, go out. We would like to see you go out and collect some money both from the town and from the state for the various missions that fall under your charter. Not ours, it's their charter. And I think if we can, we've offered, and we don't necessarily have to go out and ask Maren at each turn to raise money on, quote, our behalf. Mm-hmm. But for example, I know we could raise money for form-based code. I've already, if you go look on the state, Maren's done it. I'm sure others here will do it and could do it. Mm-hmm. Maren's the main source of information. She has all the necessary contacts. That material can be collected, but I think if we, not forced, but encouraged and actually nudged the various committees with the leadership of both the planning board and more importantly the selectmen, I have no difficulty in suggesting that they go out and get the money together from both the town and from the Commonwealth to address these problems coherently.
Yeah. What's the best way for us to do that?
I think the best way to do it is to basically go in front of the selectmen and say, please do this, and have Chase say that's a great idea, but. Okay.
Well, and actually, I'm already prepared with the but.
Good.
And here's the rub. Look at planning, or look at my experience on conservation is similar to the way planning operates. Planning has sort of a day-to-day docket, right? That there are projects and plans that need to be addressed. This is the higher level stuff. This is the planning stuff. This is the strategy. And it's what a lot of organizations struggle with, right? I'm good at doing my day-to-day work. It's when do I look up and take stock of where I am and where I'm going. And we suffered from that exact same thing on conservation. We were very good at handling plans and projects that came forward, but we already identified it. Part of it is staffing, right? if you've got a 20-hour staff person and they've got 30 hours of projects that have developers, you know, or proponents breathing down their neck about, it becomes an unwelcome discussion to say, well, let me add a broad priority to what you're doing too.
So what is your suggestion then?
I don't have a suggestion, I'm just poking holes.
Oh, okay. So you've just identified that has a not unreasonable solution. How important is land, I'm sorry, is land use and all its wonderful parts of sufficient significance to the town that it's probably worth having, shall we say, I'll use the word, either yet another consulting operation, but also staffed, it's significant to the town. Land use is not a trivial thing for any town, especially this one, given the fact that something like 69% of our space is still, quote, open. And every time I ask the question, how much of it's buildable, and people scratch their head, the housing production plan could make a long stride in doing that, and the list goes on. So I'm...
Well, in any organization, to your point, Chase, about your, you know, head down, focus going, not seeing the big picture just because of having your head down, right? So Lyle brought up a good point around polling the landowners, and those discussions, I've heard them before as well, and one of the key things to my point about having your head down is sometimes you have to even figure out whose role is it to be doing those kinds of things. And I think because there are so many little groups, just even the process of identifying whose role is it to be doing certain things and where do we, yes, I do believe we should all come together and try to talk about this, but even within that, to everybody walk away with their own implementation tasks of what that particular group is going to do, I think is important in understanding. What's your role as the selectman? What's the planning board's role? What's Mpic's role? So that we're not crossing over so much and being inefficient, and we're also filling those holes so that we aren't letting things fall through the cracks. So I think there are a lot of reasons for getting together and trying to figure out the unsiloed, but then also what can each group do that is its strength and should continue to be.
So I think reaching out to landowners is a salient example, because the last thing we need is the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, CONSCOM, and Master Plan all reaching out to the same owner independently, and then maybe saying slightly different things. That this becomes a very big problem. We take something that's not moving very quickly and we just light it on fire. Are you suggesting that what we would do is collectively get together and say, Planning Board, we're going to give you the sole responsibility for going out and contacting landowners, because it could fall on any one of our plates and we're collectively going to make this decision, that's going to be a Planning Board responsibility, and CONSCOM is going to be responsible for putting the prioritization plan together, and so is that what you're suggesting?
Exactly, and there might be certain tasks where it requires two committees to be working on it together, and then coming back in and delivering that information, if you will, making some decisions, then going back out again. So being able to do what we're trying to do in a little bit more organized fashion, I think, would be helpful.
I'm always hearing agreement.
Well,
No?
I agree with that in theory, but I wonder in practice whether that's going to really work, just because of what, Chase was talking about in terms of what the Conservation Commission does and what the Planning Board does, is that when you're a permitting authority, you're so caught up with the constant sort of requirements to meet over, and decide whether to give or not give the permits and so on, that I'm not sure you have the time or the energy or even the sort of vision to do this other kind of work, because you've been so. I was struck by this when I thought I went to, as part of our job at the very beginning, I went to the Conservation Commission.
It still is your job. Go ahead.
Oh, it goes back again?
Yeah.
But anyway, I went to them and, and I talked to them about sort of the plans and so on. but it seemed like they were so caught up in the constant sort of permits that they needed to give out. That was their role, and that's what they did. And I didn't realize that, and sort of realized then that it was really in terms of, sort of conservation, land acquisition, and things like that, that's the Conservation Trust that really had mostly taken on that. And I think the similar kind of thing is probably the case with the planning board, though you could several of you could talk about this more than me, is that you have there's so much permitting process that goes on that you have to do that. Now, we on the Historical Commission, I mean, for good or bad, we're not a permitting authority, yet, and sometimes when people say, well, we ought to have a historic district, though I like the idea of a historic district, I sort of worry that once you get a historic district in place, that then you become then the Historical Commission or it's a historical district committee or something, but still becomes a permitting authority, and everybody's time is taken up with permitting. And so, I mean, I don't know whether those of you who are involved in this more directly can answer to that, but my worry would be that if we sort of task these boards that are already overwhelmed with having to meet regularly and give people permits, that if we task them with these other roles, I don't know whether they're going to be able to fulfill that. I don't know whether other towns have figured out ways to divide these things, or to have a board that manages to do both, or what.
Can I offer a counterpoint to that? I think actually telling these boards that not only is it part of their broad mandate, but it's something that we want to help them with. Listen, no one joins planning board because they're really excited about permitting the next development, right? Nobody joins, even though that's 80% of the work, right? Nobody joins Conscom because they're really excited about septic system locations relative to wetland boundaries. We do those things because I think we're actually more interested in the broader overarching structure. And frankly, I think we lose good people off of those boards because they feel like they're burdened with the mundane and the mechanical without the opportunity to do the more substantive planning. Now, I don't know how we get around your other concern, which is it's time, right? It's time and it's resources, except to Mike's point, committing to going to bat collectively with these committees to put some dollars behind it.
Yeah, I was, when you were describing what was going on, what occurred to me is something that was noticeable in the town, and that is, I'm hearing the squeaks and the chains are banging. The town is growing and changing. And what you're describing is a committee structure that worked very well, let's say, as long ago as 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And it could very well be, and we're approaching 10,000 in population.
Apparently we've surpassed.
Depends on who you ask, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Something
just using the number. It is conceivable that we're now at the break point where as it were, the role of our citizenry would be more along the lines you just suggested, which is to look at the town more holistically and have basically more, I hate to use the word, more professional staff whose job it is to take a look at the, shall we say, day-to-day operations about permitting and all the rest, where policy is set, and then the idea is to execute. It's sort of there are models for that I don't need to go into. So even though it's not on the master plan, it looks like we've stumbled into it, and not stumbled but come upon it. It could be we're arriving at a scene where the town is now just at the point where it's not big enough yet for justifying, because of taxes and income, expanding staff because of the burden that means, the burden that carries, yet our needs are growing almost yearly. So we're really in a very difficult position, and I think we're going to have to, shall we say, improvise until we cross over that threshold. And where it is, I'm not sure, whether that's 12,000 or 15,000.
Has the Board of Selectmen had that kind of discussion?
I mean, we're coming into departments are putting their budgets together, and the direction that the Board of Selectmen gave departments was, give us a level staffing budget and give us a mission budget. Invariably, the mission budget has a lot of things in it that we would love to be able to do that we just can't, So we're going through that process again. I've got hints and whispers about what certain mission budgets might look like, but I'm disinclined to rely on those. Frankly, in a few weeks, I think January 5th, we have a budget summit with all of, is it January 5th?
Yep.
Happy New Year.
With all the department heads, where they can tell us, here's what we need, here's what we want. And I think that's where this is really gonna come to a head, where it's gonna be, what 5 different departments need is another person 15 hours a week, like.
Yeah. This is why I'm just putting it out there that we're just that break, and I think probably we could be of some help if we began, shall we say, okay, in view of the constraints, what should we attack is most important, regardless of, shall we say, what can we do with the resources more or less that we have?
Oh, well, and that prioritization is going to be important, right? What we're not going to be able to do is fund, it doesn't do us any good from the Board of Selectmen level to fund a lot of things a little bit. We bought 2 new tires for a fire truck, great, we bought a couple new light bulbs, let's deal with one priority at a time and fund it as completely as possible. And I think that's the other place where we can fit into the budgeting discussion, is say, we've done our homework, we've put our tentacles out, this is the thing that we have to go to bat for first, this is the thing we have to go to bat for second, even though we've got 60 some odd priorities.
Yep. So, back again, okay. You came in just the right time.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Since you,
I'm leaving again then.
because you oversee, we're discussing how much we're going to take out of the school committee.
Oh, yeah.
So,
We could do all kinds of things if the school committee would stay out of my.
Okay.
That's a common refrain.
No, don't worry, we're teasing.
I'm not.
But he's not. He's ready to extract and purify. That's right. All right. So we more or less come full circle. We have to set priority here. I don't know if anything we've got on our list falls into the category of should be done in view, taking into account the constraints. I want to make sure we're reasonably ambitious. I haven't heard yet. I mean, I've heard that some of you like what's on the list, some of you want to make some additions. What could we recommend? Are we prepared yet to recommend to the Board of Selectmen, because that's what I'd like to do, our sense of priority and put some dollars on it? In other words, saying we believe this is going to cost N number of dollars to do effectively. And that doesn't mean that we will do it. I want to make it very clear. That doesn't mean that we as a committee will undertake it. It would require multiple committees. In some instances, I have no idea what task you have in mind. The question is do you feel that you have heard enough, seen enough, thought enough about what you're willing to set for priorities that we would put into the basket, as it were, of submissions to the Board of Selectmen saying this is what we think should be done in view of the constraints under which the town is operating. We've got to keep that phrase in there. Yeah.
Mike, could you just clarify under 2B, infrastructure within and connections to common? Exactly what are you getting at?
Exactly what I think Anna mentioned in her commentary. It had to do with everything from sidewalks to bicycle paths to lighting, the whole, and also
Green space.
very
Tree
important is
space?
crossing safety, being able to cross the street.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, everything except the housing itself
Oh.
and the stores themselves.
How about including something like busing or,
That's transportation. And that's definitely part of it, but they have already a group.
Uh-huh.
And again, this was set out as a stimulant. But that doesn't mean that's something, if you want it on the list for the selectmen, we gotta be clear on what's this for. So,
We wait here for Mike.
No, go ahead. Keep, if,
what
I'm
we're trying to do
ready.
is,
Yeah, no, that's fine.
we've,
keep going.
okay,
I don't wanna restart the conversation.
Okay.
I'll catch up.
all right.
Thank you, though.
Okay, so I'll start with, not because I want to avoid change, but I want to start with you, Megan. What would you, from everything you've heard, what you know and sense, what would you like to tell the selectmen as a priority item?
Well, I don't really have a very strong, super strong opinion. I feel like I could be talked into one thing or the other. I mean, I do think the infrastructure with connections is important, and I think that the you know, I don't know if I really have a strong opinion formed yet on what I would
Okay.
push.
Okay.
And I would default to kind of everyone else's hive mind of and I really wouldn't know what number to put on, like budget-wise either, what to ask for.
Well, you gotta start
So,
someplace.
Yeah.
So,
100,000.
Reasonable.
Yeah.
Mike, you want to take a whack at this?
No.
No, okay, all right. Anna?
So, for what I said earlier about revisiting the initial 7, so here they are. First one is Littleton Common, so we're going to continue to work on the revitalization, form-based coding. Second one is zoning assessment and diagnostic. Presumably that will be part of what we see with the work from the Common. Third one is transportation, so connecting back to Gary and see what's going on there. Housing, as we talked about earlier, having a larger encompassing meeting would be a good place to start. The fifth one, space needs for town offices. And to the degree that we can encourage our selectmen to be able to provide more information about what's known or isn't known at this point would probably be helpful, just in the sense that that drives so many of the other decisions, whether that's from all the different components, town offices, library, park and rec, what's the fourth one? COA, senior center, et cetera. So that drives a lot of decisions, and so, and historical to what Jonathan was talking about earlier, and the town purchased a home on Robinson Road, 6 months ago, so where's the priority to fund that? And then the last one, and this goes to what we were talking about earlier about money, that master plan items are put into the annual budget. So to your point, Chase, about, gee, we can pay for 2 tires this year, but hey, at least we get to pay for those 2 tires. But if we start to allocate monies into the annual budget for master plan stuff, what does that look like? Or if we know that we really do want to have all 4 of those town hall groups placed somewhere over the next 5 years, well, what does that look like in terms of our town budget? So that's part of what that's all about. So I still go back to those same 7 as being the ones. And in terms of anything that can be cut, I don't know what can be cut, but I also don't feel like we should be adding anything more. So my opinion is, the 50,000 for a Great Road Corridor Plan, unless we can come up with more ideas about what that looks like, that one might not need to be on there, but the other 2 for sure.
Kyle?
I hear the words of 2 wise women. I will imagine smart people before me have sat around here. So, from another wise woman by Annie Blanche, don't let too many people know what you're good at, because you spread yourself too thin and you can't get anything done. So that would be a failure of all of our efforts. So if we've bitten off 7 out of 67, then accomplishing them well before we get too deep into the pool would be wise, I would tend to say. The other thing is I have to trust that you all asked me to be here for some good reason. So in my work in architecture and master planning, helping folks figure out what they're going to do with their home, what their vision is for the future, I don't have any idea how this was set up. You know, do we master plan? Do we implement? Is it just a name? Is it the Board of Selectmen that really does everything and all we do is push? So if we're talking about having 5 boards that need 15 hours a week of staff, are we that staff? Do we help see the big picture, and do we have anything to say about making it happen? Or is the structure that's in place, we say, hey, Board of Selectmen, can you talk about this in May and November and see if we can get people on board?
Jonathan?
No, following what a lot of other people said, I would go along with trying to make sure that we get done the things that we've already started on. But I think B here is the infrastructure within and connections to the common. I think that's is so much a part of what we're doing, and what the big emphasis on the revitalization of the common. So I would want us to kind of go with, push for that. I mean, I think that's part of the, we're changing, putting in new zoning and such, but that all relies then on other people to do something, which may or may not happen. And as we've said often, it may happen next year, or it might happen 10 years from now, or even further down the line. But this is something that could happen fairly soon and would make a difference in everybody's sense of what the common is. And so I would like to, I would push, I would have B as one of our recommendations, and maybe leave the other 2 for now.
Okay, you're not going to say anything, right, Clint, at this point?
The only thing I would add, I mean, I understand the theme of finishing what we started, but I also think that it's worth going through the master plan, and there are things that are achievable that do not require capital and do not require a significant amount of commitment by any one board, but getting it done may go a long way towards fostering an understanding about what the goals are. For instance, we talk about housing. There's very limited things we can do unless we start as a town buying property and building houses, which I don't think we're really proposing that we're going to do very much of. But there's also a lot of angst in the community about the amount of housing being developed and the types of housing. And one of the things that we've talked about during the master plan update process and now during the implementation process is changing or diversifying the housing stock available in Littleton. And yet, whenever something is barely floated, histrionics start to come out of the woodwork, like, I don't want that, I don't want that. Well, we kind of talked about it a lot during the master plan, and it seemed like there was an appetite for it. Why all of a sudden is there no appetite for it? Or maybe I'm just overreacting to the people, the naysayers, but I think we need to have a much richer discussion so that it's not just the naysayers that are having a seat at the table, that we're having other people who are backing that kind of thing. And I also think we need to do, as a community, whichever boards it is, whether we're taking the lead or it's the planning board and the board of selectmen, about making sure people understand what the goals are with housing and what the potential benefits are, and potential costs and negative, somewhat negative impacts. So looking for opportunities like that in the master plan, that we can initiate those kinds of efforts, along with these bigger, heavy lifts and more expensive lifts that require capital, I think would be worthwhile. I don't think that we can do that in 15 minutes or a meeting. I think that's going to be a iterative process, but I would throw that out there.
And I think what you said, Mike, is interesting because it really touches on multiple parts of the master plan. Right? If we're only, and this goes back to what we were saying, if we're only pushing the housing story forward, then we get the histrionics, right? If we're pushing land use
Mhm.
forward, then we can talk more comprehensively about, we need to make these sacrifices here for these benefits over there in a more comprehensive way that it, not that we'll avoid the histrionics entirely, but.
Like, a good example is number 23, community health and well-being. Develop specific criteria to describe town's priorities for acquiring open space. That doesn't cost anything. It might if we choose to
Well,
go to a
I actually
consultant.
disagree. I think it does cost
It
something.
could, but it doesn't have to.
No.
There's resources out there that, you know, a board that is, you know, has a lot of energy and ready to rock and roll could go get a form of that done. Yes, you could hire a consultant, and they're out there, and they'll come knocking on our door, even if we don't ask for them,
Yeah,
if they find out we're
this is
doing
broadcast,
it.
right?
Yeah, exactly. But that's the kind of thing where, you know, if we tie that into some of the housing discussion, then you start to get some consensus and some community buy-in, and then all of a sudden, when you're ready to put a shovel in the ground or write a check, we understand the context of why it's being done and the benefits associated with it. That's why we're doing it.
And that's why, with that in mind, I think we're very much on the same page here. I do think we would need to put some money behind it to actually see it go forward. I don't think it would have to be a huge amount. In terms of priorities here, I see 2C as being the most important, but I wouldn't restrict it just to the housing production plan of $50,000. I would really want to see it be $75,000 for a housing and land use plan that also dots the i's and crosses the t's for the formal housing production plan we need to accomplish. Because I don't see how we actually accomplish it without dollars. I think you're 100%
Well, the
right that we
housing
could.
part of it, I agree, but like, I'm just looking at one particular item saying, hey, and that's just an example. There are other ones in there.
I think a lot
that-
flow out of that salient
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I have in mind, or what I originally had in mind, is that a recommendation from us to the boards, the statutory boards, that we think this should be on the priority list. And separate from that, but connected with it, is something that this committee would undertake. Okay, so they're not mutually exclusive. We could do, you know, I don't think I think we can guide and promote the, shall we say, the close attention to land use, including housing, to the planning board and the board of selectmen, and say this should be a top priority among all priorities, very significant in our view. And then we could still undertake what we want to undertake that is either connected with it or contributes to it. I think that the land use is a project that really should be directed and taken under by a committee that has a broader mandate than ours. A mandate to do something and has policy and is reactive, more sensitive to public views, and has a lot more experience in a whole diverse bunch of areas than we necessarily can bring to bear with time and energy. So my recommendation, or what I'm looking for here, is not to move away from our original 7 goals, but basically, as one of our goals and one of our promotions and guidance is to make it clear to the Board of Selectmen that land use, including housing, should be a top priority for the town and therefore for them and the planning board, notwithstanding all the other nitty-gritty that they have to deal with.
Can I actually suggest for a second that we do move away from 2 of our goals as an implementation committee because they are moving forward more organically?
Yep, go ahead.
The first is the space needs. Not that we shouldn't be paying attention to it, but I don't see a need for our group to push that particular boulder up a hill when there's a space needs study group. They've got funding now for an OPM. You know, they're diligently working forward, and we have a finite amount of time and resources as well. And I would argue that one, if one could fall off the list, it could be that. The second one that could fall off of our prioritization list is transportation, only because Gary is doing an admirable job of leading the Transportation Advisory Committee and has really done a lot already in a short amount of time to build the relationships we need with the departmental staff to start to see things through and integrate ourselves. So I don't see that as a
Fantastic.
boulder
Yeah,
we
that's-
should push
that-
up the hill.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I was going to be a little more ambitious and get more lopped off, but I think those 2 definitely are on their way. There's the other one of the 7, I was just I wonder, well, we're not quite ready yet to let go, but there's certain aspects of the common, for example, that are almost, shall we say, beyond our, what we call our mandate. We're getting close to that. So specifically, do I hear any recommendation? I mean, I'm trying to get two things done at once here. One is a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board that this should be a priority for them, being housing land use. And the separate one would be modify our original 7, and we could do them separately. Any objection or further comments? All right, so I suggest that we make a motion to recommend that we recommend to the Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen that a top priority should be given to housing and land use in considering of budget and other resources in the coming fiscal year at the very least. There's enthusiasm bursting out everywhere.
Second?
You gotta say so moved.
So moved.
No, you can't say so moved.
I'm trying to.
Wow, say so moved.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Separately, do we want to deliberate tonight on the others, or do we want to hold off on what we, as a separate committee, want to do about our list? And we would consider the suggestion made that we reduce our load from 7 at least to 5, and maybe not try to add something.
Well, I used to have it at hand for looking at it all the time, and now I've forgotten what all those 7 are. I can't find it in my multitudinous.
I would like more time to go
Files,
through the
yeah.
list. I mean, I think the exercise we went through tonight was
Yeah,
worthwhile, but I think it's still going for like those big ticket, high altitude type things. And I would like an opportunity to really go through and find some opportunities to make some progress on things that aren't as complex or costly conceivably. And it's a big list, and I don't want to just have it all going one by one while we're sitting here. I'd rather we can all go home and do some homework over the break. And
Well, I think that also goes hand in hand with the idea that I think this committee should give an update to the planning board and the Board of Selectmen in terms of where it is, because there are things that have been accomplished already.
Right, that's a good point too.
Yeah.
Right, as we go through the list, we can start lopping some stuff off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It might
think
be
some of
good
them
to-
can be eliminated because they've been done.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
they've been taken over by
Right.
responsible, operations.
And that actually brings up a good idea, or at least to me, a good idea, that maybe what we should do is take the document and try to make it electronic where we can maintain the status. Because right now, we're looking at the same thing we've been looking at since we started, right?
Right.
It's static. And it's not static in the real world, it's very dynamic.
We have
So-
that electronically, don't we, Mara? At least I thought we did.
Yeah, there is a spreadsheet,
Right.
an Excel spreadsheet, but
Right, we could start with that, but like, I think we haven't taken advantage of the fact that it's in a spreadsheet and then coming up with it should be, we should agree on what are the statuses, is it
Right,
color,
exactly.
some kind of idea. We don't have to figure it out tonight, but that kind of, if we're driving towards that, I think as an implementation committee, to the point Lyle made earlier, implementation is, we're trying to get other people to implement. We're really not gonna implement much, we're gonna hold other people's feet to the fire. But being able to look at that document and say, okay, well, we already got that accomplished, we don't have to bother that person again about that particular issue, let's go bother them about this one.
Okay, I'm very happy to. I think it makes sense, given the fact that we've at least got a recommendation for something of great significance to the town going forward. I'm sure it becomes no surprise to anyone, but it reinforces something, at least as a former member of the master plan committee itself. One of the first things we were taught and became very clear is land use is perhaps one of the more important, other than where's your next dollar coming from for towns. It's land use and where's your next dollar coming from. There were the two the two hot topics, and it's borne true. And another anecdote is, don't expect private property owners to answer phone calls from people who are in the town inquiring about what they're going to do with their property. They don't all respond mysteriously.
And making sure that we draw the Ag Commission into these discussions as well. Because
Yes.
Yes,
they've
yep.
been doing some of the outreach.
Well, that's land use, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
part of, that's one of the open space land use, and for me, the Great Road Corridor falls right in that, because it's outside for definition purposes. The Great Corridor is what's outside of Great Road, outside of and beyond what we'll call the common village area, which is zoned differently than the corridor itself. So, I don't know if that helps, but that should be part of the land use. Okay, thanks very much. We'll go on to that. So, I have nothing new to report. I'm going back to the Littleton Common Revitalization. We have not heard anything recently from Fort Point.
You do.
We do, okay.
Sorry about that.
A surprise drop.
Yes, let's see, Jamie offered a quick update this afternoon. They expect to have the text of the revitalization roadmap to us by the beginning of next week.
Oh, wonderful.
And then they would need a quick turnaround on any additional comments within a couple days. And then
Okay.
they would be able to finalize, put that into the final beautiful format.
Fantastic.
Within a few days after they get the comments.
Okay,
back.
you
Is there any way that we can squeeze more than just a couple of days to turn something around out of it? It's just, I don't see it happening, for me anyway.
Well, but it's up to you.
Well,
It's your-
I need to understand from Jamie what he means by a couple of days.
Mhm.
I mean, this is supposed to be a work product that comes mainly from, we have not a contract, but we have a dependency on the consultant, who's already shared with us a fair amount of material. We've shared back a lot of material. Yet I don't want this document to have fallen into a cliff, you know, where it's not what we had in mind at all. Good grief, okay?
Well, I would go back to him with how much time do you think you would?
I mean,
need?
I will tell you
I'm
from
happy to
my
have that
perspective, it's got to straddle a weekend or it's just not going to happen.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah, that's
so, by the way, I just want to be clear that of all the things we've done, this one has, although I realize it's the worst time of year to say this to folks here, but this is one item that we're working against the deadline, but if we don't make the deadline, there's no harm, because the roadmap is a roadmap. And there's already pieces in the roadmap already crawling along. And no one's mentioned it tonight, but I will. I would say that it's quite remarkable, in my opinion, just in 5 years living here, that town meeting has taken the big step that it did, and it's loosened up a lot of thinking that used to stay quiet. I want to thank Chase for doing such a great job in the public, being the, shall we say, the face. Public facing was not the easiest job, and you did a great job, and thanks a lot. It makes a difference.
Well, and as far as that's concerned, I'm happy to give you guys a quick update on sort of where we're at as far as the
Yeah.
sewer is concerned, because it touches on so many things that we're doing here. And we have an update that our consultants will be providing to the Board of Selectmen this coming Monday, so about a week from now. Our consultants we've got multiple critical paths right now, which is sort of an odd way to describe a critical path, but all of these things have to happen simultaneously. One of those things is our commitment to the town to continue to pursue additional locations for the Quirk facility itself. Our consultants have gone through and reevaluated a number of sites, and we've essentially shortlisted a few additional sites that we now need to dig somewhat deeper into. I think one thing that folks were genuinely concerned about there is that we wouldn't make a legitimate effort to see if there was another site, and we we made a commitment to do that, and if we do, in fact, end up at the DPW facility for the treatment plant, it will only be because that truly was the best choice and there were no other viable alternatives. But we're looking at other alternatives. We're working on submitting some information to the state. Light and Water Department has become very engaged and is really working with us in a very collaborative way, which I think is a really great sign. And the other thing that our consultants are doing is putting together the first of what I imagine will be very many drafts of the connection agreements. Essentially the structure for how people will pay us and what we will commit to do for people and the timeframes. And we've got a lot of decisions that we need to make around deferrals and how we handle commercial properties versus residential properties versus nonprofit properties. Churches in particular really factor heavily into that. And so all of those sort of three things are all moving forward simultaneously, and each one needs to continue apace if we are in fact going to come to the town come spring and ask for the beginning of construction funding. So,
And I tell you, the search for additional funds, or shall we say funds, is well underway.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And a big part of what we're doing is working with our state level funders right now to continue to make the financial growth or the economic development arguments that I think will be the pathway to funding this more completely from the state. You know, the state's very interested in the environmental as well, and we're working those avenues. That money probably has a natural cap on it, whereas the economic development is a little, to the extent that we can show continued economic benefit from it, there will be then more dollars, right? The environmental benefit is capped. We know what it is and we know what we can achieve, and the state, we're asking them to contribute a certain amount based on that. But we're not going to be able to make incremental improvements beyond.
Without speaking necessarily for the state, but what could we take away as an understanding of what is explicitly meant by economic development?
What they want to see is jobs, right? That more than anything is how the state is going to measure the economic impact of revitalizing the common. That's a challenge for us. That's a challenging argument for us to make. In the classic economic development model, you bring in one big employer, and that one big employer brings a certain number of defined jobs with them, and maybe you the state or the municipality, writes an agreement with that employer that says you're committing to bring these jobs, or you're going to pay a certain amount of money, or whatever. We're proposing a different model, right? It's not just the sewer; it's the revitalization of the common as a whole, where it's small businesses, it's more distributed, it's more dispersed, and that becomes much harder to model and prove. And of course, if you can't measure it, is it real? And that's.
Okay, so the definition here clearly is, it's not, I'll just, put in something, it's not just people or housing, it's jobs.
It's jobs and it's housing diversity. I mean, that's the other interesting component of this. And I think we'll have to strike a balance in how we bring out the housing and component of this, but that's the other interesting piece. But my sense is that the housing may be capped as well. But that's just mine.
Okay, so jobs emerge as what is meant by, show us that this will help generate jobs or contribute directly. Please measure it if you can.
Please measure it if you can, yep.
Okay. All right.
So and then stay tuned for the update to the Board of Selectmen on this coming Monday, and next time we meet, I can give you guys a little more specifics.
Okay, great.
What, the other thing I should mention there is that we're working very actively with certain property owners, because now that there's real dollars behind this, we've gotten a great deal of interest from property owners who are not, let's say they were optimistic in the past, but they weren't they weren't going to spend any of their own money to to engage us until the town had shown some sign that they were really serious about going forward. Now the town has shown that they're serious about going forward. Now there are a number of property owners who really want to figure out the exact timing of this. When can I connect? I would like to write you a check as soon as possible. You know, I'm starting to put the money away to make this happen.
Are any of them, in your perspective, anchors? That they are examples, shall we say, to other quiet property owners who will be stimulated?
Yes, and unfortunately, right now, I don't want to roll out who those might be, but the short answer is yes.
Okay.
Two in particular could serve substantial economic and aesthetic undersells it, but aesthetic anchors of what we're trying to do.
Fantastic, good, okay.
There's still, of course, very strong opposition. I mean, it had to get 2/3, and it got 2/3, but not by much.
I don't know, it got 73%, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll take
Well,
it.
that's 6% more than 2/3. So.
How much more than 2/3?
Watch that math.
Yeah, how much more than 2/3 are you typically going to get? You're not going to get a plurality at a vote like that. You're not going to get 94%. It's never going to happen. Unless you're taking a non-controversial vote that costs no one anything.
It's true.
That's why 67% by its nature is a supermajority, right? If you're there, anything over that is pretty significant by
No, but
virtue of
I'm-
getting there in the first place.
My worry is, I think it was great to see, and I think we see that the town is moving in a direction, but there's still a very strong opposition, which I sort of sometimes get hammered into me by people who I love, like Jane Crisfield, I shouldn't say. Okay, but what happens if we don't get the vote at the Springtown meeting and and it gets defeated?
So let's say we come to spring and we just get demolished to the point where we decide we've got to stop. Now, the town has committed to spending $2.2 million. We're not spending $2.2 million on the design between now and the spring. But every amount of money that we spend now, if this project doesn't go forward, ends up a tax burden, right? If the project goes forward, it ends up as part of the financing package for the sewer, which is user-funded. So if it doesn't go forward, that has an implication. One of the reasons we're looking so intently at alternative locations is that my sense was that the biggest single block of opposition came from folks who abutted the prospective location. And at a minimum, I need to be able to tell them there truly is no other alternative that's even comparable to this. If there is, then we'll put it there. Do I think that will assuage them if I do have to say that? No, but I think it will also establish credibility with the rest of the town that we're doing our due diligence. What I would love is if we can actually dig deeper into our list of sites and find another site that presents a comparable alternative. I think then we actually change that town meeting vote that was 73% to 85%.
Yeah.
But I don't know the outcome of that yet.
Okay.
Well, it's always good to have doses of reality. Okay. I think the roadmap and some of the components may be of some help in laying out for the town shall we say, the trade-offs. But I'd be very happy with it, just a little bit more than 2/3.
Oh, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
But
Very happy with it. Okay. we got some new bills in, and we still don't have, I'm going back to we got the next steps for the Fort Point is going to be providing us with at least a document we can work with. I'll get in touch with Jamie and see if we can get it stretched out a bit for our back response to give everyone a chance to review the document, on the assumption that we get it early next week, and then we can, and you would like at least a weekend, is that correct?
For me to stand any chance of reviewing it, it's got to be
Okay, I
extra
especially
weekend.
would like you to be in a position to do it, not just because you're on the committee, Chase, but because of your buddies that you meet with from time to time. Okay. The billing and invoices, the specifics of them, we just got a new batch in, I'm not sure we still, the complaint or my concern here is that it's very difficult to match up as in the first stab, what is the money being spent, specifically by task. I know this is nitty-gritty, but I think that the town deserves to know, at least our committee should be in a position to answer questions, how this money gets spent and what was it, and we're working with them to give more specificity to it.
Right, and then the new information that we had tonight was the spreadsheet. that-
Right, and I haven't had, we just got them,
Right.
so we're gonna try to go over those. And I want to find out if there is, I know, Anna, that you and I both had the discussions in dealing with some of the details of the administration of the funds. Do you want to make any comments about the management of and style, anything to do with Fort Point itself at this point?
Well, are we talking about the form-based coding moving forward? Or?
Yes, yeah. In other words, using Fort Point as the contractor that arises out of more experience with working with them.
So I think most of us were at the last meeting where we discussed in November the decision as to whether or not we move forward with Fort Point as is to the form-based coding contract based on the dollars that were acquired at the last town meeting. And we voted to do that, and I did voice some concerns about that, and unfortunately those concerns continue to be exacerbated by the actions of Fort Point. And I will say it from that perspective. I'm concerned about the organization as a whole, in terms of being able to meet deadlines, and then second of all, not being able to have any backup person other than looking to Julie to do the work. So as an organization, I feel like they should have been able to work to still perform their contract duties on a timely basis, regardless of Julie's health issues and other things going on in her life. So from that standpoint, I'm very concerned about turning around, albeit I recognize we voted on that decision in November. I would actually ask this board to reconsider otherwise, and that perhaps we spend a little bit of time actually looking at what other providers are out there and what could they provide to us. Because the information that Julie conveyed to us on November 13th was, these are the deadlines, this is when you're going to have it. And we had a conference call with her a couple weeks later, November 26th, and she once again reiterated to us that she wasn't going to be able to do it, but that she would have us information, and as of yet, we have not had anything other than the contact that Jamie made today with Marin. So something happened along the way. It's like the train was on the tracks through the end of the summer, and then somehow something happened. And we don't know if it was a result of their organization being acquired by another one. We just don't know. But it's not there, and I have lost confidence. So that's my input.
What would the process look like if we wanted to go somewhere else?
We would, you can pick it up, but we're free. I've investigated this possibility some time ago because it's always good to know what Plan B and C are. Our process would be, we could begin a search which sort of started for another professional who knew form-based code. That would add time, and it would not change the budget because our budget is what our budget is. So it would be basically letting a contract, stopping with Fort Point when they fulfill their contract, which does not include form-based code. I want to make that clear.
Right.
So we would then undertake a search through January, and as soon as possible.
RFP process and
Yeah.
normal. Yep.
Yep, it would be, but we wouldn't have the vetting would not be anywhere close to what we're doing, have done in the past. It would be, oh, we like those people. It would be a certain risk involved too, because it doesn't have the competitive nature to it unless we inserted our own, brought in 2 folks or 3 folks and did it ourselves, as we did before. That's the process.
So as I understand it, the individual who would be doing the form-based coding work is not Julie. So Julie may or may not be the project manager moving forward. But again, given the nature of the work and the project management thus far of the organization, it just creates some concern. And because form-based coding is so new in terms of what this town and the state have experienced, should we take a step back and just see what else is out there? Because Fort Point could still become could be one of the bidders.
I guess that would be the middle ground that I would be interested in seeing. Invite them to bid again, but say, we need to rethink this relationship. And we need doubling down of certain commitments if you want to continue to go forward with this.
There are a couple of commitments in there in addition to timelines. There's also the backup issue, which may even be more critical this going forward than it has turned out to be now, because Julie, I think, has been trying to catch up. I don't know where that is really at this moment. The other thing is that except for the second public event, which I think personally could have gone a bit better, the work has been very good. The output, however it might have arrived late, has been very good. And some of the management habits don't match up well with the quality. That is, the quality of the work that comes out is better, both in quantity and quality, than their management skill, mysteriously. But that's been known to happen. So if the committee wishes, at the moment, I think we have a few weeks to make a decision, but about whether or not Fort Point will continue or not. We certainly let them know that if we vote here tonight that we want to reconsider, I need to tell them that we'll be looking afresh at the contract. Or
That would be
alternatively,
for the form-based code contract.
yeah, the form-based code contract.
Everything else would continue.
Right. But before I leap into that abyss, I want to make sure that we can identify at least 1 or 2 alternatives. Because if they haven't completed the contract yet, nothing disincentivizes them more than if we tell them that, well, we're having third thoughts about having you aboard.
No, actually, I would argue that it totally incentivizes them.
Okay, that's
If
the
they don't
point of
get
view.
their act together, they're gonna get cut out of an opportunity to collect on that second contract.
Okay.
Well, and which of those 2 they land on tells us everything
Yeah,
we
exactly.
need to know
They
about
may,
them.
they may choose to take it as an opportunity to opt out, but then that's what we wanted anyway, right? Because then I would never have any if they opted out, I know then I didn't want them, because they clearly weren't invested.
No, not opt out. I'd like them to successfully finish the contract that we've got. The roadmap, at least get a start done on the zoning.
They have to do that. They
Okay,
wouldn't.
all right. I just want to make it clear what we're looking
They've
at.
gotta keep,
All right.
ongoing entities can't act like that in the marketplace and be an ongoing entity.
Yes, they don't need a poor recommendation from us at all. Okay. All right. So let me get the pleasure of the board here before we move forward. Do we agree to reconsider and at the same time hold off making a decision and initiate a meeting?
I'm perfectly fine with the chair taking the lead on, reevaluating the opportunity to or looking for an opportunity for other providers.
Okay.
And if you can find some, then we can make a formal decision about how far we want to go and how aggressive we want to be.
Okay, are we agreed?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I don't think that
Given what
requires a
Anna
vote, that's
says,
just a consensus, because we haven't decided anything.
no, okay. All right, I will redouble my effort on that one. Is there any other comments that you want to make about the other piece to let you know is that, there is one person who is mentioned in the new contract, who is going to be far more essential for success of that contract, who is not a member of Fort Point, they're a sub to Fort Point. And that person is very skilled, and manages, when he's available, to deliver the goods. He does a great job in design. However, I think in this case, we want him to show up, as it were, in work, actually produce the material. So one thing that we'll enter into a discussion with Fort Point in the future, if we do anything with them, is to make sure that we get a full use of the talent that we're after, which we have not enjoyed, in my view, as completely as we might have benefited, especially during the second round of the public event. All right, we'll do that, and I'm looking forward to having Anna and I working on that one together, because we've been through the wars with this. All right, public input. Oh, before I get to that, I just want to make clear that as I indicated earlier, I've had some very informal conversations with properties, with just two property owners who have property in the common, and all I can report is that there's great interest. It sort of echoes, but I don't think it has the definitive feature of it that I think can be obtained by a member of the select board. So there is enthusiasm that wasn't there before, and interest in participating in the revitalization of the common. As far as specific plans and all the rest, it's mixed use. It's exactly what's zoned for it now, except it's going to be more shall we say, more specific in the future, hopefully. So I'm going to try to, not try, but I'm going to have further conversations with the Board of Selectmen and others involved to make sure that there are not multiple voices screaming around all this. I think it's got to be coherent. And we're busy enough as it is that I have enough to do. I don't have to do this. Okay, member input. Do any members have something you'd like to put in that have been inadvertently missed? I didn't mean to miss. Lyle, Anna, Jonathan?
Nope, good.
I will mention one thing about the Transportation Advisory Committee, and that's that we're sort of harmonizing our work. I guess I'm the Board of Selectmen's rep to that, not the Master Plan Implementation Committees, but no matter. Harmonizing our work with Chris Stoddard and DPW's sort of budgeting cycle, and our next meeting will be where Chris comes in and says, here's the dollars that I've gotten approved, here's what I want to do with those, and then the Transportation Advisory Committee, which has representatives from Mpic and so on, and other entities, will work with Chris to find ways to manifest some of that, and beyond just the pave these roads and repair these sidewalks, but actually manifest the implementation of the master plan in certain contexts, especially the connectivity of transportation.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Okay, good.
so that's sort of the cycle that the transportation group, we're trying to sort of harmonize it with the funding cycle and Chris's planning cycle.
The only other update that I have from the planning board, as you mentioned earlier about there being a lot of put your head down and just get the work done being done. We had like 13 items at the last meeting. But the one piece I wanted to mention is Judy Barrett is working on the commuter station area study, which is also part of one of the master plan items. And this week she had interviews of folks in and around town, to be able to identify what, if anything, she should take into account when looking at that particular area. So she is moving forward on that, and I think being able to have that as something that we check in on will also be a good thing.
Part of land use. Okay.
Exactly.
Yep. I guess we're at minutes. November 13th minutes. Are there any additions, corrections, alterations?
On number 3, instead of zoning board, it should be zoning work.
Okay.
Thank you, I didn't quite understand that one. Is it Lucia who's doing this? Could she please, insert a few paragraph breaks? That's a very large chunk of words and up at the top. And then, just for clarity purposes, the last 2 sentences of number 1 say, detailed comments from all input to Conroy by 11/14, then we'll send input to Conroy Tuesday, November 14th. Was that that Mpic members went to Conroy and then Mpic and town went to Conroy? Were there, or was it all just like saying you would have it? I was just trying to be very clear.
We were talking about the schedule at that point. Jude probably said she would have information to us on one date, and then we would get this stuff back to her.
Yeah,
I'll clarify that.
Okay, but that was it.
Any other corrections and additions, or should you want to get approval of the draft, subject to all
Sure.
the conditions, or should we wait for the conditions to be
No.
met?
If it's all right with you, if you trust me.
We're good.
to make
Yes,
the
yes, we are.
clarification.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not,
Yes.
you know,
I move that we accept the November 13th draft minutes with the changes discussed.
so
Second.
moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. All right, there are upcoming meetings, this is important. We have the very first, their next opportunity is January the 8th or the 15th.
Yeah, and I realized that we did have this discussion at the last meeting, and I think we landed on the 15th.
Okay, that's good, all right.
I wouldn't be able to be here on either of those days, so we'll just have to go on without.
And what is your excuse this time? Where are you going where you can't participate?
Well, I suppose we could participate via Skype or one of those kind of things. You know, my son and his family are living in Myanmar, and we're going to visit them.
How
All right.
wonderful.
So we will be there
That's a worthy cause.
during that whole time.
Get to escape the cold.
Yes, let's get the call.
And also, keep your eyes open for how they handle land use. Okay. All right.
I really need some,
You
Yeah.
can't get away from it, Jonathan.
really need some work on. I mean, I pay attention to it when I go there, and there are
I'm
real
sure you do,
problems.
okay.
There are real problems, you know.
All right,
I will be looking forward to the peaceful serenity of this room compared to what our January 14th selectmen meeting will involve in hiring a new town administrator.
oh, that's, you dropped the,
Most likely to be the 14th. If-
is it the final decision, as it were?
Potentially. I mean, the committee that Mike and I are working on will probably wrap our work up either at the end of December or early January, make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, and then the Board of Selectmen have to decide. So,
Well,
and based on the 5 candidates that we have going through a sort of an assessment process, a practical assessment of capabilities and skills and characteristics, where we have a strong crop of candidates, and it will not be a trivial challenge for the Board of Selectmen to choose among whichever 2, 3, or whatever that we end up recommending onto them.
so is the next round, if you can answer, is the next, on the 14th, is this going to be a report on the choice, or is it the,
Board of Selectmen has not yet settled on that exactly,
okay.
but that's probably where the Board of Selectmen will ultimately interview candidates, and then if we do as we did with the police chief process, we'll actually make a hiring decision that night based on the interviews. So, I'm actually advocating to change that and to sort of give us a day's worth of cooling off to think about it and ruminate, but I'm not sure how well that'll be received, so.
Well, we're looking forward to the new administrator. Is it, the title is not going to be changed, it's still going to be administrator?
That's right.
Has to, because
Yeah,
that
that's,
dictates the terms of the job.
Got
The
it.
town administrator is significantly different than a town manager.
yeah, I'm not advocating changing the chart.
No, I just wanted to know whether it was.
Governance structure.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. All right, is there any further business? If not, I'm willing to entertain that motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for